Welcome to Looking Within, a podcast to help you quiet your mind, settle your body, and see God's presence in your everyday life. I'm Julie. I hope our time together will help you to feel more grounded, whole, and filled with a growing desire to be a conduit of God's love and presence to the world around you. Now, let's begin. Do you ever feel kind of helpless and hopeless as you watch things play out politically, culturally, and climatically? As an average citizen, we are not usually in a position of power and influence. Most days, we may feel very powerless to have any effect on systems, policies, or leaders. But does this mean we have no part to play in things? And can our part only be carried out in more overt actions, as important as those are? Today, I want to urge us to keep in mind the importance of our inner life. I bet you're not surprised to hear me say that. That's the central principle of this podcast. I bring this up today because I think when it comes to ways we can influence the world, our inner self is a necessary starting place. The state of our inner life dictates our own mental and spiritual health, which affects the situations and persons in our immediate space, which ripples out from there, and so on. Clearly, we directly or indirectly influence the world around us through not only our words and actions, but also through our very presence. I'm remembering a song written in 1965 called "What the World Needs Now is Love." It was a popular song when it was written, and for years afterwards. Here's the chorus to the song. It's stunning to hear how applicable the words are to today. What the world needs now is love, sweet love. It's the only thing that there's just too little of. What the world needs now is love, sweet love. No, not just for some, but for everyone. I know this is going to sound Pollyanna-ish, and certainly not a new idea, but I wonder if the answer to our struggles and challenges as humanity does really come down to love. As we each increasingly and mindfully choose to function out of love, a new way of interacting and caring for others and the natural world just might ripple out from each of us to others. Human consciousness itself may be changed in profound ways, leading to a more loving and inclusive world. The part of us that will live this way is our true and most whole selves, our Christ self. It's the us that functions out of love, enjoying intimate connections to self, others, creation, and God. Can you imagine what our cities, countries, and world would be like if we lived lives that more closely resemble the beautiful words describing love in 1 Corinthians 13? Here they are. Love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful or proud or rude. It does not demand its own way. It is not irritable, and it keeps no record of being wronged. It does not rejoice about injustice, but rejoices whenever the truth wins out. Love never gives up, never loses faith, is always hopeful, and endures through every circumstance. These familiar words are certainly a description of the type of love that the world needs now. And it's a love that is definitely not for the faint of heart, because Paul's description of love in 1 Corinthians 13 requires us to mindfully live not from our false, ego, or separated selves, but from our true selves. Our false self is not connected to others, creation, God, or even to self. It's a very flimsy foundation on which we often build our life. Flimsy because it's easily affected by our emotions, by circumstances, by just about anything that threatens our sense of security, control, and being thought well of by others. Our true self, on the other hand, the self filled with the love and presence of Christ, This is the self not affected by our desire for power and control, or by exaggerated desires for security, esteem, and approval from others. Our true self is whole and grounded. It is the proverbial house built on the rock versus sand. It knows it is ultimately and deeply loved, valued, and cared for by God. It does not need to seek out things that feed the ego, or be upset when these things are not readily offered in everyday life. Today, I'm asking you to join me in pursuing a life that is lived out of your true self, and therefore lived in love for self, others, creation, and God. A helpful starting place is spotting the times when you're living in your false or separated self. This isn't really the real you, as you're actually filled with God's presence. Everyone and every part of creation is. But the false separated self is often the part of us that takes center stage, sometimes appearing out of the blue. Whenever we find ourselves in the midst of knee-jerk emotional reactions, frequent feelings of offense when we think we're slighted by others or life, and regular occurrences of being caught up in the endlessly unsatisfied needs for security, affection, and control, that's the false or separated self doing its own thing. Again, it's helpful to spot this and to be a detached witness to this self, which again is not your real self. Whenever you realize then that you're being patient and kind, not jealous, boastful, or rude, when you're not demanding your own way, not being irritable, not keeping records of wrongs, and rejoicing when justice and truth win out, well, those are all signs of your true self and of love. Join me for a few quiet moments to reflect on our own lives and to think a bit more about love. In this quiet space and time, I'd invite you to gently close your eyes and to take a few deep breaths in and out, in and out. Hear the sound of the bowl calling you to look within. Let it center you. Let it awaken you to God's presence. Remember St. Paul's words that love never gives up, never loses faith, is always hopeful, and endures through every circumstance. If you're beginning to lose hope as you watch all that is happening around you, hold on to love. God is love. You are filled with this love. See the importance of your sharing this love with others. I'll be back with you in about 3 minutes. Take one more minute to notice what's happened in your heart while you were in the quiet. What insight or intention will you carry forward? End by just being with God, resting in God's loving presence, and letting God enjoy your presence. I'd invite you now to take a few deep breaths in and out. In and out. Hear the bowl sound calling you back to this day. Gently open your eyes, remaining still for a moment longer. What the world needs now is love, sweet love. A pie-in-the-sky idea? I don't think so. Love was obviously important to Jesus in all that he said and did. His 2 great commandments about love for God and neighbor, and his final words to his disciples, all centered around love for others. If Christ fills each of us, then our native and true self is love, only obscured by the moments we find ourselves living in our false or separated selves. If you're losing heart and feel rather helpless to make a difference in the world, hold on to love. It's already inside of you. Cultivate it in your daily life, and be assured of God's desire to assist you in being a conduit of the very thing that the world needs now: love. Thank you for making time for your inner self today, for developing and enriching your relationship with God through reflection and discovery. Whatever you've experienced, carry that with you in the coming days. You can find more episodes at our website, Gloria-Day, that's DEI.com/lookingwithinpodcast, or subscribe through your favorite podcast app. If you know someone who might enjoy and benefit from this podcast, share it with them. Your financial contributions make this ministry possible. To give, visit Gloria-Day.com/giving. Thank you for your support. And we'll see you next time.